all the way up through Mundy Gap and all the way to the top of North Franklin Peak. And when he got there with his bulldozers, he graded that down so that it was 7 feet lower today than it used to be. The North Franklin Peak, the highest part of the Franklin Mountains, is now 7 feet lower and it's all flattened off. While that was going on, the people of El Paso said, wait a minute, those mountains are too beautiful to just belong to one person to put his hotel up there. We need to protect this land. And they got together a coalition of organizations and they said, we need to have a state park. And within a year, they made it happen. That was, at that time they were called the Franklin Mountains Wilderness Park Coalition. And now that we have a state park, it's called the Franklin Mountains Wilderness Coalition. That's how we got started. The organizations that were involved from the very beginning, many of them are here right now today. The Audubon Society, the League of Women Voters, now members are the Cactus and Rock Club, the Native Plant Society, the UTEP Environmental Advocates, all are part of the coalition. And now that we have a park, we're working to protect the land, the park and the land around it. Some of the main issues that we've been working on for a long time are Kasner Range. Are you familiar with Northeast, where the poppies bloom in the spring? That land is Kasner Range. It's 11 square miles. It's owned by the Army. It goes from the south boundary is Hondo Pass. The north boundary is the development known as North Hills. Currently, the eastern boundary is Route 54. The western boundary is nearly to the top of North Franklin Peak. So all of that land, 11 square miles, is owned by the Army. And every time a new person comes to town, they say, I could put my hotel over there. I could put a school. I could put an apartment complex. I could put a ballpark. And every time the Franklin Mountains Wilderness Coalition says, no, why don't you put it someplace else? So, good. For instance, these things really happen. You're familiar with Cohen Stadium. Yeah. That used to be planned to be right in the middle of Kasner Range, and the coalitions got together and said, why don't you put it on the other side, 54, so they did. The same thing with the community college. Community college was supposed to be out in the middle. Even the zoo was supposed to be right in the middle of Kasner Range, and the coalition said, why don't you move it over there? One of the main things that we're working on now to protect that land is called a conservation conveyance. It's a way that the military can transfer that land to a nonprofit organization that can protect the land until they clean the unexploded ordnance. Right now, don't walk on Kasner Range. You can blow up. Manny, you got a question?
Yeah, they're gonna give it back to us then?
With a conservation conveyance, there's a couple different ways to do it, but ideally, it will go to a nonprofit organization like a nature conservancy. The local nature conservancy is Frontera Land Alliance. We have some literature for them over at our booth if you want to check it out. Excuse me. So then the conservation organization would hold the land until it can be cleaned and then given to the park. Because the park cannot accept the land if it's contaminated with unexploded ordnance. Whether there's actually any ordnance out there, at the moment, it's a possibility. So it's
those are good news.
So, but we're working on that now. Another thing that the coalition worked on was preservation of a scenic corridor along Trans Mountain Road. You see all this destruction that's going on along the road now. We wanted to protect all of that. In the end, we were able to protect a portion of it, which land will go to the park. So we're still working on that. Another really important thing that's going on right now, you may have noticed, there's a problem with the entrance into the Tom Mays section. There's a big problem. It's dangerous. When TxDOT created their plan for the expansion of Trans Mountain Road, it does need to be expanded because people die out here. So the road needs to be improved. Whether it needs to be a super highway, that's another story. But the entrance to the park is near and dear to my heart. This park is the largest park that is inside a city limits in the lower 48, anywhere in the country except Alaska. The biggest park inside a city limits, the biggest urban park. And it's a huge asset. Look at it. You know, look around you. We need to highlight the fact that we have this park. The city should be advertising, come to the park. They need to have an entrance that is a direct access into the park.
Hardly see it. That's why many people don't come.
People that know how to get here had trouble getting in today because of the construction that's going on there. There's a couple problems with the current way to get in the park is to cross lanes of traffic. That's what TxDOT had in their plan. It's hazardous. It's a death trap to try to get in here. This is not a good option. The park has told them this is not a good option. You need to come up with something else. So they came up with a plan that would take traffic down the mountain to where they're going to build a new road called Paseo del Norte. Then they would have to come up to a community development, that they're a little desert hamlet that they're going to create there, and then come up to a hotel that was supposed to be just on the other side of this hill, and then come into the park. Destruction, destruction. Man,
Are you gonna let them do it?
it's up to me.
No, it's up to the commission.
Yeah. Well, we all, we're just a bunch of volunteers, but we're advocating for a proper entrance to the park. The best way to come into this park is to have an underpass. When you head back out, take a look at, as you're going out the road, just before you get to Trans Mountain, you can see there's a big low spot where you can put an underpass. Right now, there's a separation between the northern part of the park and the southern part of the park. It's cut by Trans Mountain Road. And any deer that are trying to get across, they got to cross the traffic. And it's not just the deer that's going to die, it's the person that's driving that's run into the deer that's liable to die. If we had an underpass that went under Trans Mountain Road, we could have a connection that was not only for the people to safely get into the park, but for the animals as well. It could be an animal corridor to come into the park. And that's what we need, and we need to advocate for that. So those are some of the things that the coalition is working on. If you would like to stay up to date on the various issues, please give me your contact information. And please do it so that I can read it. The best way is by email. When there's announcements, if there's going to be some issue coming up at City Hall or something's going on at a state level, you should contact your state representatives and senators. We'll let you know. So put your contact information on there if you would like.
Well, you talked about the entrance that is going, I don't know, somewhere over yonder. So it's going to be worse to get into the park and people not knowing again.
It'll be hidden.
It'll be hidden.
Right. We need a world-class entrance, a direct entrance into the park. And to me, I think it's very important. So,
Well, I guess we can cancel the ballpark going downtown and invest those monies over here.
I like that plan. But
I mean, this is,
they could cancel, if you watch this development of this expansion of Trans Mountain Road, they're building these huge overpasses to build these roads which should go to nowhere. But we won't go down that line too much further, because I'd like to talk to you about something that's not on the schedule, and that's the Rio Bosque Wetlands Park. I'll just give you a little overview, and then you tell me what you want to talk about, and we'll go in that direction. The Rio Bosque Wetlands Park is the city's largest park. We were talking about the Franklin Mountain State Park is the biggest park inside of city limits, but it's state-owned. The biggest park that the city owns is the Rio Bosque Wetlands Park. It's down by the Rio Grande on the lower valley. It's 372 acres. It's a wetlands park, but It has no water.
Straight up.
This is the problem. I also have some of their newsletters here, and you're free to pick them up, or you can go to the booth of the Friends of the Rio Bosque. Here's the deal. They created this park as a mitigation because of the environmental damage that happened when they built the American Canal extension. That was in the mid-90s. They cemented 12 miles from further over by the American Canal and downtown, and they cemented that all the way down almost to Socorro. Why'd they do that? They wanted to straighten the river, they wanted to stop the seepage of the water into the Rio Grande. And they made this cement thing. No animals can get in it to get a drink. No plants can grow by it to support the animals. The habitat was destroyed. So this is, a price you pay, but when you pay that price, you should do a mitigation and create a wetlands park to mitigate the damage that you did. So that was the concept behind the Rio Bosque Wetlands Park. And over time, it grew. The land that it sits on used to be, you know how the river used to go in a convoluted path. One of those bends in the river is now right in the middle of the Rio Bosque Wetlands Park. The concept was, if you let some water go through this channel, the plants are going to grow, it'll create habitat for the animals, it'll be a wonderful little riparian area. However, you got to have water. They built the Rio Bosque Wetlands Park just downstream from the Bustamante wastewater treatment plant. It's right next to it. What a concept. What you do is you take the wastewater coming out of the Bustamante wastewater treatment plant, you run it through the park, and then you put it back down where the river goes, right? No problem. Except the only time that we can get that water is when the irrigation district is not using it. So that would mean from like mid-December to mid-February in the winter. But when do the plants need water? During the growing season. So right now, it's been 10 years. They started this project at the Rio Bosque Wetlands Park about 13 years ago. They recontoured the land. They recreated the old bend in the river. And for 2 years, in 2000 and in 2001, into 2002, we had water in there year-round. It came down through that old river channel. The cottonwood trees took off. Volunteers went down there and planted cottonwood trees, and then the other ones just sprung up on their own. It was lush. And then, cut off the water. For 10 years, we haven't had any water down there. 3 winters ago, we planted 107 cottonwood trees. Planted them right along that old bend in the river. There's maybe 50 of them left. And every day, John Sproul fills up the water truck, and all day, every day, he drives to the Bustamante, he fills that water truck up, he drives out to the plants, he waters the plants. And it takes him a week till he can get around and back, and then he goes again, and they're still dying, especially with this drought. So, there's a lot of issues going on down there now, and we need some support because we need to have that water coming out of the wastewater treatment plant. Right now, we're giving that water away. Certain amounts of the water are obligated to go to the irrigation district, and some of it is not obligated. And we are giving that water to the irrigation district. Wednesday, Public Service Board had a meeting. We went down there and we gave them a plug. Said, give some water to the park. It's a city park. The city owns the park. And Ed Archuleta said, how much water do you need? John Sproul says, we need 37,000 acre feet a year. They're doing a little math in their head. Keep in mind, we're giving that water away for free. Ed Archuleta says, if you want that water, you got to pay us $1 million a year. Now wait a minute. You're giving that water away for free, but you want me to pay you? The school doesn't own the park. The city owns the park. The city owns the water utility. Jim Tolbert says it's like as if I had a trash can, and that trash can was full, and it was going to be picked up by the trash man. And the beggar comes over and says, "Can I have your trash?" And you say, "No."
You have to pay for it.
Pay me $1 million, I'll give it to you. Okay, so I have
What was his justification for that
we didn't get to
response?
that. We didn't get to that, but thank goodness the mayor said, "Hey, wait a minute, you're giving that water away for free." Because the smoke was coming out my ears, let me tell you. Here's, take one of these and pass it on if you like. That's the newsletter for the Friends of the Rio Bosque. It's a very unique park. Think about the idea of having a wetlands on an international boundary. In the middle of this picture is of we have about a quarter mile of riparian habitat left in the park. A very small piece, you know. It's like from here over to one of those other tents. Very small little piece. Because we put in a well. We put in a well where we're taking our own groundwater, pumping it up and into the river channel. But in August, there was an electrical storm. It blew out the pump. And so that now is dry as well. And you know, so we're pumping that water out of our own groundwater and into the river channel. How much do you think it costs for the electricity to do that? What do you think it would cost to take water, pump the water up and into the river for a month? What do you think it costs to run that pump?
$400.
That's a good guess. $1,000 a month. Where the Bustamante, right next to us, is giving that water away. Giving that water away. So this is something you could talk to your city representatives about. It's a city park. But do you have any questions about the coalition, the various activities the coalition is doing? Anything about the park? How you can get involved? Yes?
Aren't you just thinking about taking a field trip down there? So like what kind of stuff would you do?
What you need to do is call John Sproul. You see on the back here, these are things that are going on. For instance, today is a work day. And what they're doing is preparing for the event that might happen because it's coming up on the winter where we might get some water in the channel, only in the winter, remember? And last year there wasn't enough to make the wetland cells because the groundwater has dropped 20 feet.